Oh no. No!
Standing here in the bright sunshine, looking out over the vast ocean. Those days in London seem like a dream. But I do miss my time in England's vast capital. You know, he's flourished into a truly wonderful lawyer. I've no doubt that at this very moment, he's fighting some noble cause in court. Forgive me for taking so long to come to visit you. My life has been such a whirlwind since I returned. And no one could have predicted what has happened. Just 2 months after arriving home.
Ah, it's this lady again. Go away, Swan Lady.
So I came here today to ask something of you. Tomorrow, I shall be standing in court. For the only time in my life. As a lawyer.
Oh.
So please, I ask for your guidance. Kazuma-sama.
Oh, okay, it's Cosmo-sama. I was like, Susato's dad died? That's rude. Alright. The Adventure of the Blossoming Attorney. We're getting some Susato lawyer roleplay. Woo! All right, well, hello everybody, Allie here, and welcome to the Gold Mine. Thank you so much for joining me here on another episode at Allie's Treasure Trove. Today, we are getting into episode number 21 here, kicking off Daigyakuten Saibon 2. Of course, for you guys not in Japan, this is the Great Ace Attorney Adventures number 2. Game's title, I believe, is Resolve. So, I'm used to the Japanese acronyms for the different names. I know I've been writing DGS2 a lot, especially I posted on Patreon actually on Saturday, which is when I'm recording this, asking you guys to vote in a poll what you want to see for the month of September, because of course, we're not finishing the Allie Plays August takeover here in August. We'll be leaking over into September. Based on my math, should be probably another 22 to 25 or so episodes, if I remember the account that Steven gave me for parts in the comments a couple weeks ago. So definitely going to be leaking over into September, so if you guys have any opinion on how frequent you want to see these Great Ace Attorney Chronicles videos, you want to see more of it, you want to see less of it, keep it the same, but bring back those old unboxings and so on and so forth, go ahead and vote in the poll on Patreon. That's where I post that. And of course, in the community tab, you guys can always leave, or in the comment sections as well, you guys can leave your suggestions. But I'm excited to get started here. I thought we were opening up to learning that Susato's dad died, and I was like, no? Rude? That would be quite a way to start off this game, but definitely crazy. Susato is going to be, I guess, defending herself here. So Swan Lady has died. If you remember, Swan Lady was the lady who killed Iris's dad in the first case of DGS1, the Great Ace Attorney Adventures. So that was quite some time ago, quite some days ago here as well. But I'm excited to get started. I'm curious as to what we're going to discover here in this game. So the little bit of a cliffhanger we had at the end of the first game here in the Chronicles was that notes, well, not notes, but the Morse code of information ended up being a list of 4 names, including Kazuma's name and Dr. Wilson's name, so Iris's dad. So it's weird. Seems like a weird hit list. It was in Japanese Morse code, which is why that juror didn't recognize it as any kind of Morse code, like actual having any significance, because it wasn't in English. So why is the British government sending out Morse code in Japanese Morse code? Are they sending it to Japan? What's going on? And what does it all mean? So I'm curious to find out, but I guess we're just jumping headfirst into a trial here. So it is the 13th of August at 8:26 a.m. Supreme Court of Judicature, Defendant's Antechamber number 3. All right, let's see what's up here. Here I am again after 9 months. The Supreme Court of Judicature of Japan. I feel so nervous, but I must steel my nerves and find a way to compose myself. Ah, good, you're here. It doesn't do for a lawyer to be late. Oh, yes, good morning, sir. I hardly recognize you. You cut a fine figure, counsel. But you look as white as a sheet, and those wide eyes aren't doing you any favors either. Oh dear. The truth is, I'm so incredibly nervous, I feel utterly nauseated. I almost wish that I'd never been born. Goodness, not the sort of thing a father hopes to hear from his daughter, I must say. Yuji Mikotoba, professor of medicine at the Imperial Yume University. A man who, earlier in his life, traveled to Great Britain to study the latest advances in forensic medical science. And of course, my brilliant father. Excuse me. Oh, we have a new girl. Okay, so it's not Susato defending herself. Alright, so this lady here has been accused of murdering the Swan Lady. Alright, what voice? You've got incredible eyebrows. Now, before I pick some super weird voice, I'm going to reference my physical copy of the game. She looks vaguely familiar. Yep, I found the eyebrows. So, it looks like she may be a recurring character here. Don't know what her name is. If I'm going to make a big, bold prediction, I feel like her name is Shin. That would put her on that 4-name hit list in the stolen secret message. She is on the cover art here of the physical copy. Gina's there, Natsume's there though. But she's right next to Susato in the front, so it's right in the middle. I got Ryunosuke pointing, Cosmo on the left, Van Zeek's up top right, Iris and Kermit the Frog up top left, and then Susato and her centered towards the bottom. So definitely don't want to give her something that I won't be easily able to replicate the entire time. Alright. But here's the Susato voice. There's the Gina voice. What? Alright. Got our standard girl voices. What? And hi. More difficult than I would have imagined. Because of course, Ali default girl voice is Ryunosuke. I'm actually stuck here. Would I be correct in thinking that you're to be my lawyer in court today? Yes! Yes, that's right! Miss... Well, I want to thank you for agreeing to represent me. I swear on my life. It's a complete fabrication, this whole thing. Why'd she look like she was about to Susato takedown us? Alright, so her name is not Shin. Alright, so Rei Membami. Rei Membami, born the same year as I and my greatest friend. Though unusual for a woman in our time, she works at the university research laboratory, helping my father. And sadly, she's the defendant in today's trial, accused of committing a truly awful murder. Are you feeling alright? Since we started talking, you seem, well, to have become a little flushed. Oh my! It's just that you look so gallant and dashing. Sorry? Oh, they sound a little too similar, I don't know. When I fall under your intense gaze, it makes me feel rather bashful. Goodness, I don't think she knows. She hasn't realized who I am. It would seem our little plan for this trial is going to work. Oh? What do you mean, Professor Mikotoba? Even if your best friend can't see through the disguise, I think we can relax. Disguise? Yes, I've never tried dressing this way before, of course, so I wasn't sure how convincing it would be. But this does make me feel a little relieved, as you say, Father. Father? What? Is that you, Susato? I'm so sorry I didn't say something sooner, Rei. It's just that... No, what are you doing? What is going on? What? That varsity uniform, that varsity cap, that varsity cape, that varsity badge. It's so hard to see through. When I hold the filter, it's right in front of my face. I was struggling. I was like, I can't see through because it's mesh. So I read the screen through the mesh. It's not the easiest. Look at you! You look for all the world just like a student of the Imperial Yume Academy, a male student! Yes, because in Japan, don't forget, at this time, women are not allowed in court. So that's what we learned last time when Susanto barged in the first trial, is that women are not allowed in the court. As, I guess, I mean, obviously you can get tried, but not as any kind of representative. I'm glad you think so. It means all my preparations have been worthwhile. I woke at 4 this morning to make a start. But I don't understand. Why are you dressed like that? Well, you see, it was the only way. The only way she would be permitted into the Supreme Court to take on your defense in this trial. My defense? Never before in my life have I felt so frustrated about having been born into this body. Courts in Japan are barred to women. We're not even allowed to set foot inside the courtroom. Despite the fact that the laws of the land apply to people, male and female, alike. But women are forbidden? Just for today, I'll be leaving my true self at the courtroom door, so that I can act as your lawyer. Oh, Susanto, you'd go to such lengths for me? Of course! You're my greatest friend! I just worry that I shan't be the lawyer you deserve. Oh no, I have complete faith in you. Ray! It's so strange, though. I mean, you're such an accomplished judicial assistant already. And yet, just because you're a woman... What a wretched reason! I mean, why shouldn't you be allowed in court? You're so gallant and dashing. Ray, please don't look at me like that, with those flushed cheeks and doting eyes. Oh, I'm sorry, it's just... You really do look so dashing. Yes, you mentioned that once or twice. Ha 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 ha, you should be pleased. It means you look convincing as a man. I am pleased, I think. It certainly helped to bolster my confidence today. Ray, you're managing to put on a brave face in all this, but I can see through it. I've noticed how your shoulders are slumped and how you're trembling ever so slightly. Well, I mean, she is accused of murder. Makes sense. Susanto, you do believe me, don't you? I didn't do it. I couldn't have. I mean, murder? Of course! You have nothing to worry about. Your conscience is perfectly clean. Isn't that right? Yes it is. Perfectly clean. I like how she's just a more emphatic Susanto. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind about your innocence, which is why I'll stand by you until the bitter end of this trial. Whatever happens, I'll always be on your side, because that's what it means to be a defense lawyer. That means so much to me, Susanto. Defendant, counsel, court is about to begin. Proceed to the courtroom at once. You should go in at once, Ray. If you're late, the judge won't hesitate to pronounce you guilty. Oh. Stand aside. I don't think I've ever seen her run so fast. Well, Susanto, you've certainly surprised your father. Going to such lengths to be admitted into the courtroom, and with no prior experience of being a lawyer. There was simply no other way. That's all there is to it. But Father, you haven't told her, have you? I mean, I'm right in assuming that Ray doesn't know how it came to this? Yes, quite right. I've kept that information from her. It would only worry her if she found out that no other lawyer would agree to take her case. I didn't want to burden her with that. And is it true? The reason why every other lawyer is refusing to take the case? Is it really because of who the victim was? We should be making a move now, too. As you know, law isn't my field, but I'll do what I can to support my student. Thank you, Father. Alright, so we're gonna have Susanto with assistant Yuji Mikotaba. I'm Susanto Mikotaba, a judicial assistant. 8 months ago, I accompanied a student of law on a study trip to Great Britain. But 2 months ago, due to unforeseen circumstances, I found myself back in Japan. How many times have I wished that he were here, I wonder? Still, I have no choice now but to steel myself for the trial ahead. Wish me luck, Naruhodo-sama. He only gets Naruhodo-san. He doesn't get the respect that Kazuma gets. Kazuma-sama! Oh, Kazuma-sama, you were so cute. Alright, so 9 a.m. sharp. We're getting started here. I was wondering, like, if we were gonna get... what we were gonna get here for our first prosecutor, because of course, I was like, oh, Ryunosuke's in England. We just saw Ouchie, you know, the ancestor of Winston and all the other Pains. I was like, did they already immigrate? Like, what happened? How are we going to run into this? But I guess we just start off. That actually threw me for a complete loop. Was not expecting here to start off as Susato. So back to, I guess, Prosecutor Ouchie. So what did I do? The judge was super nasally. My name is the judge. I don't look anything like how I sound. And then Taketsuchi Ouchie. We'll figure it out. I don't know what to give. I mean, I know what the voice is, but I don't know what lines to say to practice the voice. So we'll just wing it. So let's get started. Going into courtroom number 1. This court is now in session to hear the trial of Ray Membami. The prosecution is fully ready to proceed, Your Excellency. He got a new haircut. I don't know if that's convincing. It looks nice. That's a nice outfit, Susato, but I don't know if I'm convinced. I'd be like, that's a chick. It is a nice outfit, though. I like it a lot. Defense counsel, are you ready? Yes, Your Excellency, we are ready. Ready? Oh my goodness. Susato has the crazy eyes, too. Yes, counsel. According to your registration details, your name is, Alright, hold on, you guys. I gotta figure out a new way, because the way I do the judge's voice is I hold the bridge of my nose and I close my nostrils, which I can't do that if I'm using one hand to hold the filter, and then the other hand to close my nose. I can't actually hit the space bar, so let me try and attach this to something. Well, that didn't work. And unfortunately, the way the hook is on this filter is it won't clamp because it's a screw clamp, but the end is bent, so it doesn't actually attach to the microphone. It's too skinny. Let me see if I can maybe stick it on the... Can I just put it in my leg? Alright, so it seems if I hold my knee up, I can stick it in my knee and then hold it that way. And then I have 2 free hands, alright. Ryutaro Naruhodo, is that correct? Ryunosuke. Ryutaro. Sorry? No, yes, I had to come up with a suitable male name for you for this little venture. So I'm afraid to say I simply put down the first name that sprung to mind. Well, counsel? Yes, that's right. That's me. Yes, I am Ryutaro, who has vowed to uphold the pride of the great Naruhodo clan. Oh my goodness. It seems Ryutaro may need to consider how to better uphold his manly act first and not overdo it. And those wild, white eyes aren't doing you any favors either. Just relax and listen. Naruhodo? A fresh face in this courtroom, if I'm not mistaken. But the name Naruhodo, would that perchance be? You may be thinking of Ryunosuke Naruhodo, currently in Britain as a part of his study program. This is, his cousin. His cousin! That's right, Ryutaro here has been studying in the provinces, but was called to the capital for this trial. I assure you, in matters of law, his knowledge rivals that of any of Tokyo's preeminent lawyers. Any of them? What a pitiful situation. Having been rejected by every lawyer in the capital, the accused has had to call in a country boy. How dare you? Oh my goodness. You're already blowing our cover here. Susato is every bit as gallant and dashing as any of you your Tokyo attorneys. I won't have you making fun of her. Her? Oh, please be careful, Ray. What an unrefined tomboy we have here. But I wonder, is your gallant and dashing lawyer up to the challenge of defending you? His wide, skittish eyes very much suggest that he is not. Ugh, I'm so nervous. Now that I'm standing in his shoes, I'm starting to understand what Naruhodo-san goes through. Like it or not, eyes are... want to flit. The case to be heard on this day is a matter of great significance to our national interests. In fact, it would be reasonable to assume that the outcome of this trial may well affect the very future of our empire. Just like the trial 9 months ago. And yet, for proceedings of such importance, we have this unknown yokel by the dock. Dear me. Perhaps this would be an appropriate moment for me to assess the defense, to determine whether you are sufficiently competent to practice in this courtroom. 9 months ago, when a certain other Naruhodo stood where you're standing now. This same judge tested him as well. We missed an achievement for pressing all the wrong answers. And even though he was just a student at the time, not even of law, he passed the test with flying colors. For a trained and experienced judicial assistant like you, this will be easy. So, counsel, do you consent to answering some simple questions? Alright, it's time to prove myself! Oh. This is cute. This is so cute, dude. Susato's out here in Ryunosuke cosplay, being anxiety incarnate, and smacking herself in the face. Yes, Your Excellency, but please do make them simple. Very well, to start with, you will state the name of the victim. Swan Lady. Ooh, that is simple. I couldn't forget that if I tried. Ah, I forgot. What's the matter? Now that I'm standing in his shoes, I'm starting to understand something else Naruhodo-san goes through. Like it or not, minds are wont to blank. It's not surprising, really. If it's your first time in this position and in that guise, even a bright spark like you is bound to flicker and falter a little under the circumstances. Oh dear, this is a dismal failure, just like me. I'm the world's worst judicial assistant to ever exist. I wish I wasn't born. Go full Sholmes. Don't fret, you only need to use knowledge you've gained as a judicial assistant to overcome the problem. You should look in the court record. Of course, the court record! Yes, the answer will be... Oh. Yes, the answer will be amongst all the key information about the case in the court record. That's right. Just use E to open the court record. Thanks, Dad. Then you need to flip to the people section with E. Don't take too long over it. His Excellency is watching you closely. All right, check the court record with an E. That's where the information I need will be. All right, let's hit that E button. Here we go. We gotta go people. Swan Lady. Yep, Takatsuchi out. She has a new haircut. Giselle Brett. Oh yes, I too forgot what her name was. I mean, he looks perfectly healthy to me. I was like, oh, maybe Lord Strongheart wasn't lying about him being deathly ill. I was like, oh geez, that's a gravestone. But nope, he's fine. Don't trust Strongheart. Don't trust him. Even though he technically didn't do anything in the first game, I was like, I don't trust him. We'll see. We'll see if I'm just a not very trusting individual. Or he actually just done something weird. I'm waiting, counsel. What
What is the name of the victim in this case?
I don't want to press the wrong. I don't want to do the wrong answers. I don't want him to make fun of us. The name of the victim who lost her life in this case is Miss Giselle Brett. Giselle Brett? A name that will never be forgotten in the courtrooms of our country, I'm sure.
Correct! And being a member of our empire's judiciary, you will be well aware of the significance of that name. So, let me pose another simple question. As you know, Miss Brett was a visiting student from the Empire of Great Britain. Why then is her name indubitably associated with our own empire's judicial history?
Obviously, you won't have forgotten that case from 9 months ago. But if it's proving hard to recall the finer points, everything you need is included in the court record. Obviously, I still remember. That was the start of everything. Giselle Brett, behind the woman's student persona was the face of a killer. Queen Victoria, obviously. Yes. 9 months ago, a visiting professor of medicine at the Imperial Yume University was killed. And the culprit was Giselle Brett. Yes, she was a killer. At the time, our country had just signed a new treaty with the Empire of Great Britain. And it was in the midst of this delicate diplomatic situation that the incident occurred. An Englishman, Dr. John H. Wilson, was shot dead. I believe he was an associate of yours, Professor Mikotaba. Yes, I was indebted to the man. He'd been my mentor when I went to London to study forensic medicine. Indeed, it was I who convinced him to abandon his daughter and come here to Japan as a visiting professor at the university and then not talk to her for 10 years, her entire life. Naturally, the murder of an Englishman on our soil was a matter the government wished to resolve rapidly.
Indeed it was, which is why a secret trial was conducted here at the Supreme Court.
Ooh, secret trial.
A student at the Imperial Yume University was arrested on suspicion of murder. A second-year English language student by the name of Ryutaro Naruhodo. With the help of his best friend, a student lawyer, the accused conducted his own defense and exposed the despicable crime committed by Miss Giselle Brett. Miss Brett eventually admitted to her crime. However, when questioned about the motive that drove her to take Dr. Wilson's life, she gave no satisfactory answer before the trial reached its conclusion.
Immediately after the trial, the British government brought its consular jurisdiction into play. We were unable to sentence Miss Brett according to our empire's laws. It was decided that she would be removed to Shanghai, China instead. Why Shanghai? There's a British consular court there.
Correct, I oversaw the negotiations personally. The date of her transfer to Shanghai was finally settled upon only last week. All that remained of our empire's obligations was to see the woman safely on board a steamship.
Alright, hold on 1 second. This isn't working. Can I attach you here? Alright, I've got it attached now to a box of magic cards. I think this is okay. And yet, the very day before her departure, the Englishwoman was killed. Only the day before?
That will do. I'm satisfied that the counsel for the defense is sufficiently capable of representing the defendant.
Oh! Thank you, Your Excellency! Over the first hurdle.
Now, a summary of the incident, if you please. Prosecutor Ouchie. As is your wish, Your Excellency. The repugnant crime took place on the 11th of August, in broad daylight. Hey, look, little seagulls. Flying rats. They're cute, though. On the outskirts of the imperial capital, under a bright blue sky at a secluded bathing spot by the sea. The incident occurred inside a small beach hut, erected for bathers to rest or change their clothes. The cause of death was a single stab wound to the posterior abdomen that pierced the victim's lung, an injury which proved fatal. There were two persons alone together in the beach hut at the time of the victim's death. Ms. Bratz, in her bathing attire, and the accused, Ray Membami. Accordingly, there could be no doubt of the accused's guilt, especially when we consider she had a powerful motive. The police arrived rapidly at the scene and promptly arrested the young lady. This man's just butthurt. There's no foreign swan lady to simp over anymore. Well, that extraordinary description of events leaves me somewhat lost for words, I must say.
That's certainly true. The prosecution's summary was full of words that raise an awful lot of questions. As a lawyer, I really ought to pick up the prosecution counsel on what he said about the motive. You're clearly exaggerating. Powerful motive is a blatant overstatement.
Is the yokel boy using long words he doesn't fully understand?
I beg your pardon?
No matter, let us put this to the accused, shall we? Membami-san, you're a research assistant at the Imperial Yume University, I believe.
Yes, I am. I'm working with Professor Mikotoba in his laboratory at the moment.
I can confirm that the defendant is an excellent assistant with a strong sense of responsibility. Fascinating to hear. Now another question. Prior to your work with Professor Mikotoba, whose research were you assisting then?
Oh, I was studying under Dr. John H. Wilson.
Dr. Wilson? The visiting English professor who was murdered by Miss Brett 9 months ago? The accused had a deep-seated respect for her former mentor, Dr. Wilson. Is that not true?
Yes, Dr. Wilson was a wonderful man.
Interesting. Then tell the court what deep-seated feelings you had towards the Englishwoman who killed him.
Well, obviously I was filled with hatred for what she'd done. A powerful hatred. Oh no, Ray, be careful of what you're saying.
The motive was revenge. Plain and simple, Your Excellency. Well, it was clearly a trap all along.
How wicked of him to use Ray's undying respect for her former mentor against her like that. I must find out more details and something we can use to bolster our defense. As a lawyer, I really ought to pick up the prosecution on what he said about being alone together. Membami-san? Yes, what is it? Naruhodo-san? I'm really starting to wish we'd made my alias Ryutaro Satsato. Please tell the court why exactly you were present at the bathing spot with the victim in the first place, and why you were alone with her.
Oh, well, no, that's not true. It wasn't like that at all. There were other people present. A detective who was guarding Miss Brett, for starters. I was just asked to accompany Miss Brett as a companion, that's all. But let us be clear. At the moment of her death, you were alone together with the victim in the hut. You and no one else. The truth is, there's only one reason why this young woman accompanied Miss Brett on her bathing sojourn. It was the accused's last chance to take the victim's life.
No.
Because, as we know, the following day would see Miss Brett extradited to the British authorities in Shanghai. And the accused would never have an opportunity to dispatch her again.
conjecture, counsel.
The prosecution counsel seems to enjoy using provocative tricks like that. But for now, at least, we need to assemble more facts. Try not to let him goad you.
Oh dear, this is really terrifying. But Father's right, we need more information. As a lawyer, I really ought to pick up the prosecution on what he said about the bathing spot. If I may, Prosecutor Ouchie?
What do you want, you fresh-faced young yokel student?
I wonder, could you explain, please? You mentioned a bathing spot.
My apologies. Clearly my modernity has confused the poor country bumpkin's simple mind. Bathing spots are the very latest trend in health practices from the West. We are told that bathing in the water of the ocean is curative, therapeutic, and excellent for the skin's...
No, that's not what I meant. I was referring to the fact that Miss Brett had, to all intents and purposes, been found guilty of murder. Why would a known criminal have been relaxing by the sea?
For old time's sake, I believe.
Sorry?
Miss Brett was to depart for Shanghai the following day. Her final wish, as it were, was to enjoy a day at our country's wonderful coast. And the British Embassy put extreme pressure on our government to comply.
But on what grounds would we agree to such a request?
Because, as usual, our government is unable to stand up to foreign powers. In matters of diplomacy, it seems we don't even have that courage to decline the whims of a known criminal. Don't look at me, Professor. It was the government who granted permission, not I. In any case, it was decided that, with a dedicated detective on duty, nothing could go wrong.
But in fact, a murder took place.
I said don't look at me. It was that young student girl who did it, not I.
No one has proved that yet.
And I wouldn't provoke the man if you don't need to. I believe we all have a clear picture of the incident now. Despite her guilt being determined 9 months ago, why do all these three people's voices sound the same? If only I knew 21 episodes later I'd run into this issue. I would have picked different voices. Ms. Brett managed to avoid incarceration, instead continuing her research work at the university. What? Why does she get to continue working? Obviously, over that period, she and Ray would have encountered each other on a number of occasions.
Seeing the murderer of the mentor for whom she had such great respect enjoying such undeserved liberty.
Yes, even if it was only temporary until Miss Brett's extradition to Shanghai. You can hardly blame Ray for her feelings of anger and resentment.
Poor Ray.
So, Your Excellency, if you'd be so kind as to peruse this exhibit, a photographic print that shows the scene of the crime immediately following the grim incident. Yes, thank you, Counsel. A tragic image. No, it's not. What goes around comes around. Giselle Brett, who wasn't even a jail brat, she just got to do whatever she wanted. Got to go to the beach, got to keep researching. Probably got free room and board at the jail. Lame. As you can clearly see, there is nowhere within the hut that anyone else could have hidden. Except, what about back here, under this thing? The court will accept this photographic print as evidence. As I understand it then, the victim and the defendant were alone inside the beach hut at the time. This is deeply troubling, I must say. The finger of guilt points firmly at the defendant. Well, Your Excellency, naturally the prosecution has much more to its case. We intend to prove the accused's appalling actions beyond all possible contention. To that end, I can confirm that we have multiple witnesses to the crime and damning evidence.
Witnesses? But who?
One of whom, I might add, is a highly respected police detective. I assure you, the testimony of these witnesses will leave no room for doubt. Oh, they're gonna leave a lot of room for doubt. Yo, Hosanaga, you gonna do us dirty? Very well then, Counsel. Bring forth your witnesses.
I, Takatsuchi Ouchi, have been waiting for this moment.
Sorry?
Oh yes, I haven't forgotten that trial 9 months ago here in this very courthouse, when that irreverent little student boy utterly humiliated me.
Arr! Ryunosuke Naruhodo! What, yes?
This insult to the Ouchi family name will never be forgotten.
You've become conceited with age, Counsel. Look, the old have to stand aside and make way for the new. It's the way of the world. May you never forget that.
Strike the head of a samurai whose top knot has been cut, and the bell of cultural enlightenment tolls. Yes, on that fateful day, my former self died.
The start of your own mini Meiji revolution? Are you modernizing as well, Counsel?
Silence! Since I swore revenge back then, there has been a minor miracle atop my head. Observe the Ouchi growth. You see the seed of hope sprouting forth from the barren expanse of my crown.
I think that tiny growth is trying to tell me something.
I'm afraid I can't really see. Where is the hope exactly? I said silence! Today, I face another yokel student of the Naruhodo clan. Well, I will vanquish you, and my victory will be fertilizer for the seed of hope atop my head. You have been warned. With that, the prosecution calls the witness to the stand. It looks like the stakes are high on both sides in this trial. The prosecution and defense each has much to lose.
A haircut is hardly comparable to Ray's life.
Why do you have a turtle? What?
I have so many questions. Why is Natsume-san here? And why does Hosonaga have a turtle in his hat?
Witnesses, please state your names and occupations for the court.
Chief Inspector Satoru Hosonaga, Imperial Police Bureau. I'm in disguise, obviously, so I can go undetected. And I am, well, the next big thing in books. An author renowned throughout the capital, in fact, yes. Going to be sold out. The satirical I Am a Cat, a sensational success by Soseki Natsume. Oh my goodness! Struggling student from the provinces, please. You needn't be in awe of me. I needn't? It's only natural that you'd feel nervous in my presence, but all of you, please relax. Call me Soseki even.
You know, fun fact I learned today, Soseki Natsume is a real person, a real historical author in Japanese history. There was a cat named Wagahai, and a book called I Am a Cat. This is all meta. This is all meta. I like it.
Yes? What on earth is Soseki-san doing here?
Tread carefully, Susanto. That author fellow knows you from your time in London, doesn't he? If he exposes you for who you really are, this will be over before it's begun.
Yes, of course, I know. Isn't it so convenient that our omniscient narrator knows everybody's voices to do already? That's super convenient. I presume Soseki-san wouldn't have forgotten about me. I could certainly never forget him. Although he does seem to have changed somewhat in the 6 months or so it's been since I last saw him. And as for Inspector Hosonaga, that amazing outfit is hard to believe.
Do I have something on my face? Yeah, a turtle.
Well, your glasses for one, although they don't seem to be helping you see. Thank goodness he hasn't recognized me either.
I suppose it's this disguise, is it? And I thought that appearing here in the clothes I was wearing at the time would make for a more faithful testimony. It is my guiding principle to carry out all testimonies flawlessly.
Well, I can appreciate why an Imperial Police Bureau detective might have been present. Well, what business did a writer such as yourself have being at the scene, Soseki-san?
Well, you see, I had been asked that day to give a lecture. And on the morning of the incident in the Imperial Yume University's Grand Lecture Hall, no less. At Yume University? After the lecture, I had very pleasant conversation with a researcher from the medical science department. The professor over there, in fact.
With Professor Mikotaba? Yes, that's right. It was arranged by one of the newspapers. They wanted some story or other about 2 former students who'd studied in Great Britain.
And of course, being a renowned author, the press never leave me alone. They secretly spy, snapshots, scribble stories, and scuppered my privacy. As you can see, the conversation was written up in this newspaper here. Read it at your leisure, my provincial struggling student friend. I have plenty of copies.
Thank you very much. He practically threw that paper at me.
Anyway, following my interview with the professor, the lady in question appeared and made a very unexpected announcement. I should like to go with everyone to see our country's coast. Those were her words.
As I explained before, Miss Brett was never taken into custody. She continued to work in my laboratory under strict surveillance, of course. At which utterance, the university immediately contacted the government to seek guidance. And the response was, permit Miss Brett to go along as a detective accompanies her.
That detective I am at liberty to divulge was me, Chief Inspector Satoru Hosonaga.
Thereby, the entire party departed cordially for the seaside, it seems.
It was extremely challenging to clear out all other members of the public from the vicinity of the beach. This man still has a cough. But fortunately, I am at peak physical fitness at the moment, so...
Yeah, that...
Peak physical, this is it. This is what the ideal man looks like. I'm sorry, everybody. Peak physical fitness. It's coughing up blood 24/7. You mean you guys can't do that? Psh, y'all are missing out. Y'all are missing out. I was able to carry out my duty flawlessly, except for the fact that she got murdered.
Oh my, Inspector, you... Well, you do have something on your face now.
Oh, he has little turtles on the thing. That's nice. How unsightly. I do apologize.
Does that mean you went to the beach too, Father? No. Fortunately, I had work to finish off. But unfortunately, of course, it meant that, as my assistant, Ray was invited to take my place.
Of course, being a renowned author, I didn't like to decline the invitation. But if only I had, I'd never seen that awful sight. Relentlessly racked by remorse and regret.
Very well, I must now ask you to present your formal testimony to the court. You will give an account of all that you witnessed on your impromptu excursion to the coast.
Of course, Your Excellency. Relentlessly racked by remorse and regret, I am. Can we get this guy a nice bed to sleep in? He's still too tired. He's still too tired. Like, I understand not being able to sleep in the lodgings he had in the Garadib household. But dude, you're back home living the life. Take a nap. Get some rest. On the day of the incident, I was ordered on a special surveillance assignment in this disguise. I just managed to catch that crab when I suddenly heard a caterwaul from behind me. I ran into the beach hut at once, where I found the pair in question. Yes, that young girl was astride the Englishwoman, dagger in hand, as she stabbed wildly. I saw blood on the blade. It proved to me that she'd stabbed the victim multiple times. Oh, well, conveniently, she was only stabbed once. Easy. Present the autopsy report.
Indeed, it does appear from this testimony that both witnesses here present saw it. The very moment of this heinous crime.
What? Now, if you will recall, I promised evidence as well. What phrase did I use again? Ah, yes, this was it. Damning evidence.
What have you there, counsel? A so-called fountain pen, is it?
Correct, Your Excellency. I found it at the scene whilst examining the body. It appears that in her dying moments, with her final ounce of strength, the victim clutched the piece of evidence that would positively identify her killer.
What? Your Excellency, if you had cast your eyes over the photographic prints of the crime scene once more.
Ah, goodness me! the victim is clearly grasping something quite deliberately there in her hand.
That's right, the fountain pen. And if you would kindly examine the pen, Your Excellency.
Ah! The owner's initials have been engraved into the eminent barrel. R.M. Ray Membami. The initials of the defendant.
Ah! No!
This fountain pen will be admitted immediately as critical evidence.
So, have I admitted anything? Decisive testimony and damning evidence? There's a bright blue sky outside the courthouse today. Perfect weather to ascribe guilt, I feel. I don't understand. The prosecutor Ouchie of 9 months ago had none of this man's poise.
Counsel for the defense, you may begin your cross-examination now. Naruhodo-san.
Naruhodo. That means... Oh, yes, me!
Is there another Naruhodo in my courtroom?
Actually, there isn't even a single Naruhodo in your courtroom.
Cousin Ryutaro, pull yourself together, please.
All right, I've seen this countless times as a judicial assistant. Find inconsistencies in the witnesses' testimonies to prove that they're lying somehow. That's all there is to it. That's how a real lawyer would handle a cross-examination. So let's see what I can do.
I mean, I'm just gonna jump right on it. Right? Doesn't the I just managed to catch that crab. Alright, I'm gonna present this. Let me just jump right on this.
Objection!
With that accusatory cry that just welled up from deep inside me, I think I finally understand. Every time Kazuma-sama and Naruhodo-san have stood here at this bench, the stakes have been very, very high indeed.
What's the meaning of that menacing pose, counsel?
I'd like the witness to clarify something for me.
Who? What? Where? When? How? Like the guy taking notes in the background.
Not you, Saseki-san. This query is directed at Inspector Hosonaga.
Not me.
In your statement just now, you said that the victim was stabbed multiple times.
Yes, that's right. As I said, when I entered the hut, the defendant was already standing over the victim, bloody knife in hand like a murderous demon.
And yet, that cannot be.
What?
Get to the point, please, counsel.
In the post-mortem report, it clearly states that the victim was stabbed one time only.
Ah,
Oh, he's just dying.
In other words, Inspector Hosanaga's testimony is clearly flawed.
Ew. Jamming. I really like the use of traditional instruments here.
And Soseki-san,
Me?
you claim to have seen Memami-san in the throes of stabbing the victim.
Yes, I did. Wildly.
But both you and the inspector confirmed the same point, that there was already blood on the knife that you saw the defendant holding.
Yes, and?
It's quite simple. We know the murder weapon was used to stab the victim only once. Therefore, there is no way there could have been blood on the knife if that single stabbing hadn't already occurred.
True.
And what exactly is your contention, Counsel? Are you ever going to tell us?
Yes, Your Excellency. There's only one logical conclusion. What Saseki-san in fact saw was not the moment the defendant stabbed the victim at all, but the moment that the defendant in fact withdrew the blade from the victim's body.
That can't.
Excellent work, Susato. You exploded at them without objection and then proceeded to pull them apart systematically.
Objection!
Well, this takes me back. Yes, I seem to remember your cousin staged a scene much like this in that trial 9 months ago. Now, a half-witted child with a half-baked objection, attempting to steal the show. And you're right, there were certain similarities. Except that so-called half-witted child managed to outwit the prosecution, who was only half a head of hair. Slander, my head is quite adequately dressed. In any case, all this talk of stabbing, withdrawing, and multiple wounds, it makes not a jot of difference. What? Why not? Engage your brain, young man. When the accused first plunged the deadly weapon into the victim, that was the fatal blow. And it was that moment, just as she had withdrawn the blade for her next strike, that the witnesses saw. The knife was already tainted with blood because the accused had already stabbed the victim. Ah! All you have successfully shown with your little display is that the mustached author is prone to moments of extravagance. Ah!
I'm in agreement with the prosecution. If the defendant was seen wielding the blade at all, that is sufficient grounds for her actions to be viewed with suspicion.
But if she was withdrawing the blade?
And we are back where we started.
Sorry?
Consider this, young yokel boy. If the student girl is innocent as you claim, then why would she have pulled the blade from the victim? And with a demon's cold-blooded composure, too. The prosecution demands an explanation, and it had better be good.
Why did Ray pull out the knife?
Ah, yes. Going for the jugular.
What does Father mean by that?
Let the court hear your answer then, Counsel.
The truth is, I don't really know. But I have to come up with a plausible reason here, or we don't have a case. The reason why the defendant pulled the knife blade out of the victim's body was surely so she could...
Stab her again, obviously. Hide the knife. Trying to save her somehow. I don't know how that would work.
According to the postmortem report, the victim's death was not instant.
That's correct. It's thought she would have remained conscious for a short while after sustaining the injury.
Indeed, giving her time to take hold of this piece of evidence that clearly indicates her killer.
But the point is, being a medical research assistant, Membami-san was compelled to act when faced with the wounded victim. Instinctively, she pulled the blade out in an attempt to save Miss Brett's life.
Did you hear that, Your Excellency? It would seem this is the best we can expect of this young yokel. Indeed.
Is it just me, or does it suddenly feel much colder in here?
Your Excellency, if I may.
Speak, witness.
I would like another opportunity to testify. In respect to the slipshod assertion just put forward by the yokel defense counsel, I mean...
Slipshod?
An excellent idea, Inspector. Our young yokel hopeful has a modicum of knowledge when it comes to the law, it seems. But in matters of medicine, he appears to possess not one iota of common sense. Very well, Inspector. I will permit your request. You will testify again before the court on the subject of the defense counsel's assertion.
Yes, sir, I will do so flawlessly.
I like the turtle. Can we pet the turtle? Can we get the turtle in full view?
Alright, forensic medicine primer. Pulling a blade from a wound without thinking could cause heavy bleeding. That's basic knowledge that any medical research assistant with an ounce of sense ought to know. In other words, there's no good reason why the defendant would have tried to pull out the knife from the victim. Let's not forget that the young student did have a motive for killing the victim. The man the victim murdered 9 months ago, Dr. Wilson, was the defendant's highly respected mentor.
Is what you just said true, Inspector? Could pulling a knife from a wound really cause the wound to bleed heavily?
Yes, think of the weapon itself as a stopper in the wound that prevents excessive blood loss. Until a doctor is ready to provide proper treatment, that stopper shouldn't be removed.
Oh, right. I see.
This is why yokels should stay on the farm. Even a quack from some obscure mountain village would have such basic knowledge. Anyone who's ever given someone a little poke with a knife and pulled it out again knows it.
Oh, well, I've never stabbed anyone, you see, or pulled a blade out of a wound, so...
Of course you haven't. I didn't bring you up to behave like a bandit.
Father, is it true what they're telling me?
Yes, it's basic remedial knowledge from medics. Ray would have been well aware of it. And if she were to claim ignorance of such fundamentals, that would prove fatal in many ways.
But then, why would Ray have done it? Could she have pulled out that knife in full knowledge that it would be fatal from his bread?
I don't know.
Ray never once mentioned anything about the knife to me. It seems almost impossible to believe, but... could my friend actually have...
Susato!
Yes?
Pull yourself together. We mustn't lose sight of why we're here.
Ah!
Counsel, it's time for your cross-examination.
Oh, yes, Your Excellency.
However, I must warn you that if your cross-examination fails to identify any issue with the established facts, I'll be moving to my adjudication immediately afterwards.
I understand. Believing in your clients and fighting for their cause until the bitter end. I knew it would be hard, but I had no idea it would be this hard.
I'm just gonna press everything.
You say doing it without thinking could be a problem. Does that mean if you use due care and attention, it would be alright?
I wouldn't have thought this needed spelling out, really, but... the blade is like a stopper in the wound. Remove it, and a serious hemorrhage will occur. In other words, a medic would need to be present before any attempt was made to withdraw the blade. Doing it without thinking would be madness. You just can't do it.
Oh, well, thank you for such a thorough explanation.
You see, Counsel, when you act without thinking, the result is a bloodbath.
Ah,
Back to the witness testimony, please.
Hold it!
in that case, there's an obvious explanation here.
Which is...
Clearly, the defendant, Raymond Bami-san, does not possess an ounce of sense.
So that's the angle. That's the angle we're going for here. What do you think about that, Professor Mikotaba?
I'm not sure that you should be labeling your best friend as lacking in common sense.
Well, I thought it would be better than labeling her as a murderer.
I don't know, young people today. That's friendship, I don't understand it. Careful, Counsel. A lack of common sense can be a very dangerous thing.
Oh dear! That recoiled on me rather badly.
That's life, I'm afraid. A lesson everyone must learn.
Hopefully, you can see now that this is really basic medical knowledge. Being involved in medical research, Minbami-san would certainly have been aware of it.
Hold it!
But the defendant has suddenly encountered somebody she knew lying on the ground, bleeding to death. The sight could have shocked her delicate sensibilities, causing her to remove the blade inadvertently.
I really don't think inadvertent actions can explain this. He's petting the turtle! We have pet the turtle! That turtle's neck doesn't look very stable. The woman is a medical research assistant. I can't imagine she would behave so rationally.
Oh, but irrational behavior is a woman's prerogative, isn't it?
Oh dear, you have a lot to learn about women. And only a small-minded man can have such bigoted views.
Oh dear, perhaps I'm letting my male persona take a hold a little too much.
Oh my goodness. Well, have I managed to convey the basics now? That should cover the medical side of the argument. Let's see Susato get run ragged again. Let's press this, see what happens. Let's see Susato shoot herself in the foot some more.
Whatever the motive, it just isn't in Minbami-san's nature to do something so awful.
But she had both motive and opportunity. That's very hard to argue against.
But you don't know the defendant!
Attention!
And you, counsel, do not appear to know the law.
Yes, evidence is the only way to convince the courts of your arguments, not feelings.
With this fledgling to defender, I would almost say I pity the accused. So do I.
Inspector, you will reiterate your point about the defendant's motive, please.
Ah, yes, Miss Brandt was in many ways the sworn enemy of Minbami-san.
Hold it!
Well, yes, that's true. Dr. Wilson recognized Minbami-san's talent and offered her the position of assistant despite her being a woman. She was extremely grateful to him.
Yes, the Englishman appears to have been a very broad-minded individual.
Dr. Wilson had no time for outdated traditions. He met with opposition, of course, but he believed firmly in Minbami-san's abilities.
Clearly, the defendant was in the man's debt, which only serves to prove my point.
This is hopeless. I can't find a single crack in this testimony anywhere. If Ray knew that withdrawing the knife from the wound would threaten Miss Brett's life further, I just can't think of any way to explain why she did it.
Susato, it's at times like these when it's especially important to remember the fundamentals.
The fundamentals?
Evidence is what counts in the courtroom, isn't it?
Of course, but I've been through the court record dozens of times already.
I think perhaps you're forgetting something, though. You needn't take the evidence at face value. You can and must examine it in greater detail, too.
Ah!
And I realize this is your first time playing a role of lawyer in the courtroom, so if you need reminding of the rudiments, you need only ask. I'll do my very best to help.
Examine the evidence in the court record? It's an idea, certainly. What should I do? I know what to do. Come to think of it, Kazuma-sama and Naruhodo-san were always turning evidence over and over in their hands. Yes, I need to examine things in greater detail, with space.
Ah, by the look in your eyes, I see it's coming back to you. Go through the court record again and have a thorough look at everything. You may just find a clue.
Yes, I'll do it straight away.
We should inspect the pen, I feel.
If we take off the pen's lid... Now let's unscrew the barrel, shall we?
What's that?
This must be the little reservoir that holds the ink.
Yes, you fill it by drawing ink from a bottle up through the nib.
Is something wrong, Father?
Just that there doesn't actually appear to be any ink in there, that's all.
Oh yes, you're right. It's pretty much empty. Well, it could be on the verge of running out, I suppose. There's some sort of emblem here, look! But it isn't a Yume University one.
It must belong to some other organization, I suppose. A business of some kind. But that would seem to imply that the pen doesn't in fact belong to Ray. Alright. don't know if any of that actually helps us, but...
The RM initials are very clearly engraved here.
And the fact that Miss Brant was clinging to this pen in her dying moments is a very clear message, too.
To identify her killer, you mean?
I don't think there can be any doubt that this is a key piece of evidence in this case. Alright, we checked everything thoroughly. Can I check the pen nib? No. Alright, so we've inspected the pen. And we can, there's a new Wagahai.
Raucous England returnees tell all. This is the interview with you and Soseki-san, is it, Father?
No, look at the cute little cat.
Looks as though it was quite an exchange.
Yes, he became a little over-animated when he was talking about his time in England. The photographer managed to capture the moment his hand karate chopped me on the neck.
I do hope you weren't hurt. This is the newspaper from Soseki-san. There seems to be an important article on the back page as well. Exclusive deadly poison stolen from Yume Medical Research Laboratory. From Yume's Medical Research... Father, isn't that your lab?
What the? Let me see that. The poison's been stolen.
It's this morning's paper that Soseki-san gave us. Are you saying you didn't know?
As embarrassing as that is for the head of a laboratory, I didn't. I've not heard any such thing. Where on earth could the reporter have gleaned his information?
Come to think of it, there was no article mentioning this story in our paper this morning, was there?
It's a highly toxic poison we've been working on in the strictest confidence. I put Ray in charge of the project.
Ray? She was managing it?
If what's written here is true, it means that she tried to hide the theft from me. And moreover, the details were leaked somehow.
I don't believe it.
We need to read this article very carefully. Alright, we've inspected that. Look at the poison article. Alright. Smallest amount entering the body via the mouth or a wound from a poison-laced blade would prove fatal in minutes. Huh? Okay. Alright, and this is just the, Ooh. So she died not from the stabbing, but from the poison, huh? Yeah. Ooh, we can present. She didn't want her to be poisoned?
Objection!
No, there is one possibility. One very good reason why the defendant might have decided to withdraw the knife from the victim's wound.
What? Ah, the yokel not only has a poor grasp of the law, but is also a poor loser. Tell us then, what possibility do you think you've identified?
It's here, in this newspaper article. An article about a deadly poison having been stolen from a laboratory at the Imperial Yume University.
Objection!
The victim perished from a stab wound. Poison has no relevance in this case.
But...
Prosecutor Ouchie, you will let the defense speak.
But a newspaper article, the court cannot reply on that kind of hearsay those wretched publications carry.
Counsel for the defense. I am going to need some tangible basis for your claim. You will indicate to the court precisely what part of the newspaper article mentioned affirms your assertion.
Your Excellency.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Ray would never have done something to further endanger Miss Brett's life without just cause. The reason why the defendant pulled a knife from the victim's body is explained in the article where it says...
Oh, let me look at it again. Oh, right, the second part, I believe. Right, the tiny quantities.
The article reveals the following property about the poison in question. When the toxin enters the body on a knife laced with the poison, it's rapidly absorbed and causes death in minutes.
Are you suggesting?
If the knife used to attack Miss Brett was laced with this very poison, it would explain why the defendant, Membami-san, would have withdrawn the blade as soon as possible. Yes, the truth is, it was an attempt to stop the poison from entering the victim's body.
What? Got that one-piece bathing suit swag. He looks so funny from the back, you can see his butt cheeks.
This is complete and utter nonsense.
Not at all. The defendant withdrew the knife blade from the victim's body not to accelerate the woman's demise, but to save her life, and the prosecution cannot deny the possibility.
Have you not read the post-mortem report? The cause of death was hemorrhage. The word poison appears nowhere in the documents.
Well, that's because by acting quickly to remove the blade, the defendant prevented the poison from taking hold.
Objection! Oh, please, this is clearly desperation. This is the weasel's last breaking of wind. The poison has nothing to do whatsoever with this case, as I believe the defense is well aware. We have no proof that the information in this wretched newspaper article is at all reliable in any way.
In that situation, what the student should have done is wait for medical assistance to arrive. But instead, you claim she suspected poisoning and took the intentionally lethal decision to remove the blade. She must have had a strong reason for her suspicions then, or the argument makes no sense.
Exactly. Well put, Inspector. On what grounds did she do it, yokel?
Why did Ray suspect the stolen poison was involved? If you want grounds, I'll give you grounds.
What?
You can't possibly.
Yeah, we can, because the autopsy report said her pupils were shrunken.
For your expression, counsel, it appears those are not empty words. But naturally, as you stand in this courtroom as a lawyer, you must be aware that words alone, empty or not, are of no value in modern justice system. The court demands evidence.
Yes, Your Excellency, I'm well aware of that. I've seen it many times from my place at his side in the Old Bailey.
In that case, counsel, you will present the proof to the court now. What evidence demonstrates a clear link between this case and the poison in the newspaper article? Take that!
I would ask the court to refer to the notes section of the post-mortem report, which reads, extreme meiosis, pupil constriction, was observed in the victim.
Huh.
Clearly, being a yokel with no knowledge of forensic science, I have no idea, so please do tell me. Presumably, the fact that this condition of the victim was noted in the post-mortem report means that it's an unusual symptom of death?
Well,
under normal circumstances, the pupils dilate when someone dies. If there was extreme constriction instead, that's most certainly unusual, yes.
What are you doing, you yokel detective?
In the newspaper article, there's the following information about the stolen poison. Onset of symptoms occurs in minutes, ending with acute contraction of the pupils prior to death.
What?
If the defendant, upon seeing the victim stabbed in the back, happened to notice that the pupils of Miss Brett's eyes had constricted severely.
Yes, as a medical research assistant, she would have suspected poison immediately, without doubt.
Prosecutor Ouchie, I think you'll agree. This is very compelling evidence.
You, yokel student and yokel professor! believe the defense has expertly demonstrated a credible reason for the defendant's actions.
No.
Yuji Mikotoba,
Yes, Your Excellency?
I believe you are best placed here to confirm or deny the veracity of the defense counsel's argument. You will tell the court the truth about the details reported in this newspaper, please.
It pains me to have to admit it, but I'm afraid I don't know.
You don't know?
The toxin was kept under lock and key in my laboratory, certainly, but I was unaware of any theft.
Do you mean to tell the court that reports of this theft are unfounded?
No, Your Excellency. Without returning to the laboratory to investigate myself, I couldn't say. Ha! Listen to the bumbling academic! Unaware of the theft of the secret state research from his own workplace until he reads of it in the newspaper. And I take full responsibility for the incompetence of my supervision. Father! It's a pitiful situation for a university professor. You should have more control over your students, rather than allowing them off on killing sprees. That's totally unfounded! None of this is Professor Mikotoba's fault. It's all my fault. Ray!
And Bobby-san, you stand accused here. Outbursts like this will not be tolerated.
But it was me. I was the one who noticed that the poison we were developing had been stolen that day. What? So you knew? I'd been placed in charge of overseeing the project. It was the day that the professor and Soseki-san were interviewed together for the newspaper. That's when I noticed that some of the poison was missing. Just a tiny amount it was. Why didn't you let me know immediately? I was scared. The whole project was supposed to be confidential, but some of the toxin had somehow been taken. So I decided I'd try to get it back before anyone else found out. Because I had a very good idea who the thief was. The thief? You don't mean? Yes, of course. It was that dainty English woman.
Miss Giselle Bratt.
That's why I decided to join the little group of people going to the seaside. Inside the beach hut, I confronted Miss Bratt. But she just sat on a stool at the back of the hut, smiling sweetly at me as if she knew she was untouchable. I know it was you who stole the poison. Well now, whatever do you mean? And then, she suddenly got to her feet before falling to her knees in front of me and then collapsing on the floor. That's when I saw the knife in her back. I couldn't understand what had just happened. And then, a moment later, I was seized with fear. And the pupils of her eyes they'd shrunk to tiny pinpoints. And I don't believe it.
In other words, you realize that the victim was suffering the effects of the stolen poison.
My mind started racing. I hadn't seen anything past Miss Brett's lips whilst I'd been with her. Which left only the one possibility for the way the poison to have entered her body. On the blade of the knife in her back!
That train of thought was what spurred you to withdraw the blade.
Yes, if the amount that had entered her bloodstream was small enough, she might still have a chance. That's what I'd hoped. Really, I'm so sorry for staying silent all this time.
Your attempt to hide the truth of what happened is not something that can be overlooked. However, I have duly noted the courage with which you confessed in the end.
Oh, thank you, Your Excellency. It's barely perceptible, but I do think the balance has shifted a little here in this courtroom now.
Objection!
Your Excellency, do not be deceived. The victim just collapsed before your eyes, you say? Well, Membami-san, if that is the case, perhaps you could explain how Miss Brett came to be stabbed. Well, you have no answer because of the simple truth. is that you stabbed the victim motivated by revenge.
Objection!
But you have no conclusive evidence to prove that assertion, do you? Oh, I have evidence, and it is very much conclusive. What's the prosecution counsel up to? It was brief, but he hesitated for a moment there. I'm almost sure of it.
You will produce the aforementioned evidence at once, Prosecutor Ouchie.
Perhaps some praise is due, young yokel student. What? I'd imagine there would be no need for me to submit this evidence. But you brought this on yourself. What the? Could a more damning shot exist? The cruelty on the air and the beach is almost palpable. This evidence, more than any other, reveals the true extent of the accused's murderous nature. For it shows the precise moment that Mamami-san plunged her dagger into the victim's back. No, that's not true, no! I don't believe it! Ah!
Order! Counsel for the defense, was it you who was responsible for that shrill scream that just pierced my courtroom?
Perhaps his voice is yet to break. These yokels are slow of mind and slow to mature. I'll show you who's slow to mature. Careful now. Susato is starting to show her face here.
It is often said that a picture's worth 1,000 words, and here we have ample proof. The court will accept this extremely cogent photographic print as evidence.
I can't believe he's had a photograph like that up his sleeve the entire time. It's such a stark image, I'm genuinely lost for words. Wait a minute, I don't understand. How did you... I mean, who took that photograph? Ray!
Objection!
That's of no importance here. Stop trying to divert attention. Oh.
Objection!
That's an absurd thing to say. It's crucially important. Whoever took this photographic print was a witness to Miss Brett's death. The court must be allowed to hear this person's testimony.
Nah! I will uphold the defense's demand. The prosecution will reveal the identity of the person responsible for taking this photograph at once.
Well, I'm afraid I can't do that. Pardon? You see, this print arrived at the Imperial Police Bureau headquarters by express post yesterday. There is nothing to indicate the sender's name or address. The provenance of the print is unknown.
Goodness!
Are we to understand then, counsel, that in full knowledge of the fact that this photograph has the murkiest of origins, you nevertheless believe it fit for submission as evidence in the Supreme Court? When you first produced that print before, I noticed that you hesitated for a brief moment, because you knew that it wasn't completely reliable evidence, didn't you? Silence, you yokel student and blabbering professor! What matters is the blatant truth that this print so eloquently expresses. But the defendant has already admitted to pulling the blade from the wound. Clearly, this isn't the moment the knife was plunged into the victim's back, but the moment it was withdrawn. Don't waste this court's time with your ramblings.
Indeed, without knowledge of who produced this print, we have no means of verifying the claim. And the scene it captures is without doubt the most compelling evidence presented to the court. If the defense is unable to shed any further light on the matter, I believe the conclusion is clear.
Oh no! Susato, this is the time for you to fight. And if what you've established so far is true, then there can be no doubt. This photograph shows the moment that Wade withdrew the blade from the victim. Yes, we just need to prove that somehow. You'll have plenty of time to rue your defeat on the slow train back to the provinces. And to rue the day you came against Takatsuchi Ouchi in a court of law. If I can't determine who took this photograph, then the trial is going to come to an end. There must be a clue somewhere. There must be some way of working out who took it.
Well, counsel,
Your Excellency, the burning question is who took that photograph, and the truth is...
Let's look at the court record. She's not. Hold on. Look at people.
I have the answer. It's whoever else has RM initials on the pen. Because the pen isn't pictured in the picture. So therefore it's suspicious, even though Ray kind of blocks the visual of her other hand where the pen was. This isn't about whether I can or can't come up with the answer now. I simply have to. The identity of the person who took this dramatic photographic print is, I assure you, something the defense can and will reveal.
What? No, you can't possibly. But, as you so boldly claim that you can, please, enlighten us.
Unfortunately, I'm unable to present a name.
How utterly underwhelming. Did you really believe you could...
However, I am able to present evidence. The defense has a piece of evidence that reveals important details about the photographer's identity.
What? Very well then, counsel. Present your proof to the court. Which piece of evidence do you claim reveals something about the identity of the mysterious photographer?
Take that!
A piece of evidence in question is this.
I'm afraid, counsel, that when presenting evidence, you must learn to temper those wide, nervous eyes.
Alright, so it's not the pen. Alright, I was thinking it'd have to do with the pen, because it has the mysterious logo. How did they get this angle? That's my question. That's my question, is how did they get this picture angle? Oh, it has to be...
Take that!
the article. Right? No. I was gonna say, because who else has to be the person who leaked the info to the newspaper, because nobody else knows besides Ray at that point of the stolen... I feel like it does have to do with being able to...
Take that!
I mean, there's only so much I can present. How am I wrong on each and every one of these? Alright. Alright. We haven't presented this yet, so let's just... Let's... Yeah, I don't know.
Take that!
Alright, what the heck? Alright, we gotta look at the history here. Incriminating photograph. Crime scene photograph. The poison article. And the pen, right? It doesn't make sense to be the autopsy report. I mean, we'll try this, and if we lose, we lose, and we submit the autopsy report, well, postmortem report.
Take that!
Okay, alright.
What is that? That newspaper again? Raucous England returnees tell all.
It's not the headline that's relevant here, Your Excellency. It's the photograph.
Oh. Oh. Oh, so that... I didn't even notice that. I didn't even notice that. I admit my defeat here.
If you look closely, you'll notice that there are some white lines on the right side.
Ah, yes indeed. They had already caught my eye as it happened.
Ha, what of it? A shadow of some kind, presumably, from the branches of a tree or the like.
No, their camera's broken.
There are no trees growing inside my laboratory at the university, I can assure you. Now, if you look closely at this photograph, look at this photograph!
I was wondering what that was.
Good gracious!
Good gracious!
Yes, exactly the same pattern of lines is present on this photograph, too!
Objection!
That's cool, we can subpoena the witness.
Well, that tells us nothing. Ha! Yes, it's a shadow of some kind, definitely, from the branches of a tree. There wouldn't be any trees growing inside a hut at the beach, Council.
What's quite remarkable about it is the two patterns are absolutely identical. How could such an extraordinary similarity have transpired?
The curious matching pattern that appears on both photographic prints is a result of... Obviously, it must be due to a problem with the camera used to take the photographs. Wait, with the photographic device? Yes, we can confidently say that the camera's lens must be scratched. And that the scratched lens causes unwanted lines to appear on every print taken with the device. In short, the two photographs under consideration here were taken with the same camera. But... There must be hundreds of such camera devices here in the capital. It would be utterly impossible to identify the owner of this particular
Objection!
one. I think you're forgetting, Prosecutor Ouchie, that one of the photographs featured in a newspaper article. A newspaper? Ah. That's right. The author of that article is the mysterious witness to this crime. What?
I don't even know what kind of yell that was. Oh.
I see why you're called a raucous England returnee.
What are you yelling about? You've already testified.
It's many memo, I tell you, many memo. Many memo.
Soseki-san? What was that? Did you say many memo?
Ever since I returned to Japan, no reporter from the Shoyu News has been hounding me, following my every move. A reporter by the name of Ryutaro Memi Memo. Yes, hounding me from dawn till dusk.
Writing many memos. I like it. He's writing many memos.
I love it when I can actually figure out what the puns are on names. Like Taketsuchi Ouchie, because he's the ancestor of the Pain family. His name is Ouchie. Writing many memos.
Now that he mentions it, there was some weirdo standing behind him earlier.
Yeah, it's that guy. They secretly spy, snapshot, scribble stories, and scupper my privacy.
Could that same reporter be?
A camera to the left of him, a notebook to the right. There I am, stuck in the middle with Writing many memo.
So you're saying that this picture was taken by
many memo, yes, my lord, your excellency, Esquire.
Officer, find this newspaper reporter at once and bring him to my courtroom. We will adjourn for a short recess in the meantime.
Oh, yes, your excellency. As you say, your excellency.
And one more thing. I want this knife, the murder weapon, examined for traces of poison. You will solicit the assistant of the Imperial University's medical department for the task. Understood?
Many memo.
Ooh, to be continued. Ooh. All right. I thought that guy earlier was weird, but I didn't think he'd come back. I thought he was just a stalker. Or like his personal assistant. I was initially thinking that it was his personal assistant. That's so weird to overwrite this. But yeah, goodbye. Goodbye, my old friend. But alright, that's it here for Trial Part 1 in Adventure of the Blossoming Attorney. Man, I'm loving this here. We're being a lawyer as Susato lawyer replay. Wasn't expecting that at all, as I mentioned. I was thinking maybe there'd be, you know, just deeply covered in shame, Prosecutor Ouchie immigrated to England and went against Ryunosuke again or something like that. But yeah, this is definitely very interesting. Not a take I was expecting whatsoever. And I definitely had a great time here. Curious to learn more about Ray here. Ray seems to be pretty smart as well. Not child genius Iris level. But, you know, to be recognized by Dr. Wilson, taken in as his assistant, where I guess it's either not typically allowed or not common whatsoever to have female lab workers. So that's cool. Fun fact, I actually worked in a lab for a while. A stable isotope lab. I also typically say laboratory, but I'm going with laboratory just because there's a lot of British influence. I feel in a lot of these people's accents just because of what we're dealing with in the game. So I feel like if they're hearing that word, they might say laboratory. I don't know. So that's why I've been going with that. Sorry if I'm bothering anybody with some of my pronunciations here, but that's why I went with that. I also don't think I was able to completely recapture the Ouchie voice. To be fair, though, I've been dealing with a lot of allergies today. My eyes have been very itchy. My throat's been a bit dry, so I think everyone's voice has been off for maybe the past few days in general. But I'm curious to learn more. I'm assuming Susato is going to end back up in England. I have a hard time thinking this whole game will just go here, just being Susato in Japan. So I'm curious to figure out what happens here. And what's the motive on this reporter? Is he the one that stabbed Giselle Brett? Is he in cahoots with Giselle Brett? She not wanting to go get tried in Shanghai was like, I'm gonna enact revenge on some of these people. You know, knowing that Susato and Ryunosuke, you know, got her, you know, to make their life miserable somehow by attacking the friend and framing her for murder and just taking a way out. Just being like, I'm gonna just sit here, steal this poison, put it in my own back to make it look like you killed me. So then, A, she doesn't have to deal with the consequences of murdering Iris's dad. and 2, getting somebody else in trouble that she, I don't know. I don't know what her, I still don't understand what her motive would be to kill Dr. Wilson, unless she's some kind of secret spy. Like I said, it was weird that Wilson's name, Cosmo's name, Shin, and I don't remember the 4th name, but those were the 4 names on that stolen disc in Japanese Morse code that McGilded had, so that was very curious. I'm curious to see how things go from here. So far, it seems fun. Hosanaga's back, Natsume's back, Ouchie's back, being ridiculous with his little hair growth spurt. So I like it. Of course, the first trials of each game are always kind of hand-holdy, which is why, you get the tutorial and things like that. But I'm excited to learn. If I have one regret for this episode, it's that I went straight on into presenting the autopsy report about the multiple stabbings and not pressing Natsume on the crab. I almost caught that crab. Part of me wants to actually just go back and not save and just press on the crab, see what he has to say about the crab, but who knows if it would actually give me a satisfactory answer. But I think that does it here. We're getting on into Great Ace Attorney Adventures 2 Resolve. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, don't forget to go on ahead and hit that like button. Episode number 21 here. It's been moving along. So I hope you guys have been enjoying it. If you have any comments, theories, what you want to see here out of this game, what loose ends you want wrapped up, what new ends do you want to see begin? Let me know your thoughts, expectations, and questions you have down in the comment section down below. And of course, if you're not yet part of the Allie's Treasure Trove family, I'd love to have you join us here. Make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Also, before I get on out of here, I do have to give a big shout out to all of my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so much, you all, for your above and beyond support. I really, truly do appreciate it. To have 4 Ultimate Excavators, Jack Perez, Keith Muta, Mako, and Stephen Olivo, 3 Gemstone Miners, Andin, Mark Mardini, and Stephen Bly, and 1 Crystal Collector of John Michak. But again, thank you so much to all of my patrons, whether you're on a tier in which I say your name at the end of every video or not. I really, truly do appreciate your guys' above and beyond support. But with that, that'll do it for me here today. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Take care, and I hope you'll join me next time as we hopefully wrap up this mystery here on Allie's Treasure Trove. Take care, everyone. Hope to catch you in the next episode. Bye.